Many years ago, in the lively village of Eid, there lived a young man named Tund. He was the only child of his parents, who were known for their tiny store where they sold firewood and roasted corn. Life in Eid was simple but tough. In this village, a man's success was not measured by his intelligence, wealth, or even his ability to wrestle, a sport the villagers loved. Instead, a man's success was measured by how many children he had. If a man had only one child, people would gather in hushed tones and whisper, "What kind of unfortunate man is this? Who'll call him Papa when he's old?" Tund had seen his parents mocked for years because they had only him. His father, a quiet man, would scratch his head and sigh, "Maybe if I had more children, my firewood business would have grown into a forest." The villagers laughed at them, and it made young Tund's blood boil. He swore that when he grew up, he would have so many children that even the village chief himself would need a calculator to count them. As soon as his parents passed away, Tund left Eid. There was no way he would stay in a place where people called him the last surviving branch of a dead tree. He packed his old bag, filled it with corn from his mother's store, and moved to the bustling town of Ife. Life in Ife was different. There were tall buildings, roads paved with red stones, and, best of all, he didn't have to fetch firewood anymore. Tund got a job as a bus conductor. Every morning, he would hang out of a moving bus, screaming, "Enter with your change." No change, no movement. The pay wasn't great, but at least he had something to eat and a small room to sleep in. Tund didn't forget his big dream, to have a village football team worth of children. But first, he needed a wife who was ready for this mission of multiplication. One day, at the bus stop, he met a young woman named Ada. She was selling boiled groundnuts and plantain chips. "My wife! I have found you," Tund declared, grabbing a handful of groundnuts without paying. Ada gave him a sharp look. "Fresh milk, you have found who?" she asked. "You, of course." Tund grinned. "I want to marry you. Together, we will build a generation. But let me ask you an important question, how many children do you want?" Ada burst out laughing. "Not so soon. But maybe 4 children. Or 3. 4? Tund scoffed. "Me, I want 20. In fact, 25, just in case 5 of them decide to become lazy." Ada blinked. "You want to turn your wife into a baby-making factory?" "No, not at all." Tund waved his hands. Ada looked at him like he had fallen from a tree and asked, "Do you even have a house?" Tund cleared his throat. "That's not important, my dear. What matters is vision. With the right vision, everything will fall into place." After several months, Ada found him amusing, and to his surprise, she agreed to marry him. After the wedding, things started off well. Ada continued selling groundnuts and fried plantain chips, while Tund kept shouting at passengers in his bus. Then, boom! Ada got pregnant. Tund was overjoyed. His dream was beginning to take shape. When Ada gave birth, she was happy to be a mother. But just 4 months later, she became pregnant again. Tund jumped up like a man who had just won the lottery when Ada broke the news to him. "Are you serious?" he shouted, lifting her up and twirling her around. "Ah, my good wife, you are doing well. May God continue to bless your womb the more. This is how a woman should be." Ada, already dizzy from breastfeeding, slapped his hand away. "Put me down before you spin my intestines out." Tund gently dropped her and began dancing around the small room like a madman. "Another baby. Another baby on the way," he sang. But Ada was not smiling. "Can you hear yourself at all?" she asked, frustrated. "Just 4 months after I gave birth? Do you think I am a chicken that lays eggs every market day?" Tund stopped dancing and scratched his head. "But this is good news, now. God is blessing us so fast. Very soon, we will have our own football team." He shouted so loudly that even the landlord, Baba Kunnal, who was passing by, cleared his throat in response. That evening, Baba Kunnal called Tund outside. "My son, I heard the good news," he said, chewing on a stick of sugarcane. Tund smiled proudly. "Yes, Papa, oh. Another child is coming." Baba Kunnal stopped chewing. "Another one? Just 4 months after the first one?" "Yes, sir. God is really helping me." Baba Kunnal looked up at the sky as if asking God a question. Then he sighed. "My son, let me advise you. Children are like pounded yam, sweet, yes, but if you eat too much, your stomach will hurt." Tund laughed loudly. "Don't worry. I can handle plenty pounded yam." The old man shook his head. "Let me ask you, how much do you even earn in a month?" Tund cleared his throat. "Well, the thing is, it's not about how much I earn. It's about how much faith I have in God." Baba Kunnal dropped his sugarcane stick and put his hands on his waist. "Faith? Did you just say faith? My friend, faith cannot buy baby milk. Faith cannot buy diapers. Faith cannot pay school fees. When your children start eating like hungry lions, you will know that faith is not a balanced diet." Tund stopped smiling and found a way to dismiss the landlord. To him, the old man was an enemy of progress. When the second baby arrived, everything changed. The one-room apartment, which once felt big, now felt like a sardine can. The crying competition between the two babies could make even a deaf man hear again. Tund's salary as a bus conductor was no longer enough. Before, he could buy a plate of jollof rice at the roadside restaurant. But now, every time he brought out money, Ada would snatch it and say, "Diapers first, jollof later." One night, as Tund lay on the floor, because the bed now belonged to Ada and the babies, he stared at the ceiling and sighed deeply. Ada, feeding the baby, looked at him and smiled sweetly. my husband, how far? Do you still want 25 children?" Tund turned his face to the wall and pretended to be asleep. The next morning, Tund made a decision. "I need a better job." Ada clapped for him sarcastically. "Finally! My husband has woken up from his big dream." And so, Tund set out to change his life. Tund had done all kinds of jobs to survive. He was a shoeshiner, a bar's apprentice, and even a church drummer until the pastor chased him away for falling asleep during Sunday service. One day, he saw an advertisement for a security job at a bank. "This is it," Tund said, running home excitedly. He wore his best trousers, which still had a small hole, and went for the interview. The bank manager looked at his CV and raised an eyebrow. "Do you have any experience?" "Yes, sir," Tund said. "I once secured my neighbor's chicken from thieves." The manager sighed deeply. "Sir, I mean real security work." "Oh yes, sir. I once fought a dog that tried to bite my landlord." The manager dropped the CV. "Congratulations, you are hired. Not because of your senseless CV or your senseless experience, but because I like you." Tund didn't mind the insults. He was just happy to be hired. The next day, he resumed work in his new uniform, feeling like the chief of police. One day, a rich man parked his car in front of the bank and threw his car keys at Tund. "Boy, go and wash my car." Tund stared at him. "Sir, I am a security officer in this bank, not a car washer." The man looked at him and said, Is it not the same uniform that car washers wear?" Tund's jaw dropped, and the feeling of being a chief of police disappeared in an instant. That night, as he got home, he sat down, removed his shoes, and sighed so loudly that even a baby in the womb would know something was wrong. Ada, rocking their baby, smiled at him. "How is work today, my husband?" Tund looked at his noisy children, his small room, and his tired wife. Then he looked at the ceiling and said to himself, indeed, children are not akara that you just fry in the morning, and life is not moin moin that you just eat without thinking. I have received insults, but this one has dealt with my self-esteem. A few months later, Ada sat on the edge of the bed, her arms wrapped around her 6-month-old baby, while her firstborn, barely a year and 6 months old, snored softly beside her. Tears streamed down her face as she looked at the little bundle in her arms. She hadn't even fully recovered from the last pregnancy, and now it had happened again. Her best friend, Meso, stood beside her, shaking her head. "Ada, is it that sweet?" Meso exclaimed, her eyes wide in disbelief. "Abi, your husband put sugar inside there?" "Because I don't understand." Ada sniffled and wiped her nose with the edge of her wrapper. "Meso, I don't know how this thing keeps happening. I just look at my husband and boom, pregnancy." Meso gasped dramatically. "Look at him again now, let me see something." "Maybe you have spiritual eyes that get pregnant when they admire a man." Ada couldn't help but chuckle through her tears, but the reality of the situation made her sigh heavily. "What will I do? I am tired. This is just too much for me." Just then, Tend walked into the room, his face bright like someone who had just won the lottery, except his own. "My wife! My blessing! My fertile queen! You have done it again." Ada stared at him blankly. Meso clapped her hands and folded her arms. "Ah, is everything all right, my dear?" Tend asked, rubbing his stomach as if he was the pregnant one. "You see, children are wealth. See all these rich men driving big cars? If they don't have plenty of children, what is their wealth for? Money is not as sweet as the sound of children calling you daddy from every corner of the house." Ada blinked. "Daddy from every corner? Do you even know what it takes to raise one child, not to mention 3 in 2 years?" Tand waved a hand dismissively. "My dear wife, why are you worrying? The same God that gave us these children will provide for them." "Oh, God will come and buy the diapers?" Ada asked. "My dear, God will give us the wisdom we need to buy the diapers," Tand replied. "Okay, God will come and carry one baby while I carry the other one?" Ada asked again. "My dear, God will send neighbors to help us," Tand replied. Meso clapped her hands and turned to Ada. "You see this your husband, eh? If wisdom was measured like height, he would be a dwarf." 9 months later, Ada gave birth to a set of twins, a boy and a girl. As she returned home from the hospital, she sat in the small, stuffy room staring into space. Her first 2 children were already running around the room, one attempting to chew his slippers, the other scribbling chalk on the wall. She sighed deeply. She didn't know if she should be happy or worried. Tund, on the other hand, was over the moon. He danced around the room like a masquerade at a festival, carrying one twin and tossing him in the air. "God has remembered me. Twins. A full set. If people like, let them keep talking. My wife and I, we will keep producing." Meso, who had been sitting by the corner with her arms folded, finally spoke. "Ha! My sister, enough is enough. You need family planning." Ada sat up straight, looking at her friend with wide eyes. "Meso, what are you saying?" "Yes. You need family planning before you turn your one-room apartment into a maternity ward," Meso said firmly. Tand waved his hand dismissively. "Meso, you talk too much. Family planning is for people who don't have faith. The God that gave us these children will provide for them." Meso leaned forward. "Ah, don't say that, oh. Because God provided yams, will you refuse to buy a knife to cut it? Use your sense, my brother." Ada sighed. "Meso, I have heard you. But did she go for family planning?" "No." "Did they stop having children?" "No." One night, after years of continuous pregnancies, Ada made a drastic decision. That night, Tund finished a mountain of fufu and egusi soup, wiped his mouth dramatically, and stretched like a king who had just conquered a kingdom. Then he gave Ada the look. She knew that look. That was the same look that had brought her 8 children in 7 years. Ada sat up straight, folded her arms, and said in a voice as cold as harmattan morning, "Tund, if you even breathe near me wrongly, I will pack my load and move to Messo's house." Messo clapped excitedly. "Yes. Come on, my bed is big and my pie is plenty." Tund laughed nervously. "You women don't understand." "No, Tund, you don't understand," Ada interrupted. "My womb is officially on strike." Twisted Zaddy, she repeated. "Yes, love, he had a waste again. You know I cannot sleep well without my night exercise. You, this man, you have the audacity to call it exercise when I'm the only one doing all the work, carrying the result of the exercise for 9 months, pushing them out, nursing them, and then doing it over and over again, like a broken record." She exhaled deeply. "If I don't do something drastic, I will continue like this until I have enough children to form an Olympic team with. Substitutes, I need to act fast." With a dramatic sigh, she turned to him, placed a gentle hand on his shoulder, and looked him straight in the eyes. "You, my husband, my sugarcane, my fresh bread." Tund grinned, puffing out his chest. "Yes, my Tant J, I have decided," H said solemnly, "that you need to rest." Tund asked, looking confused. "What do you mean?" Ada chatted his chest. "Haven't you noticed you have been working so hard training this football team all by yourself? You need a break." Tund looked uncertain. "Break? What does that mean?" "Yes, you need a break," she said. "You have scored enough goals. It is now time for retirement." His eyes widened in horror. "Retirement? Who is retiring you?" "Of course," she said. "You are a legion, my husband, a record-breaking striker, who is a culture to be measured when we have you. But my dear, even the best players retire. My love, you have played a very good game, and it is now time for you to rest." Tund looks like she had just told him Thady soup had been bound worldwide. But I still have strength," he said, showing off his mother. No, Ada said quickly, "you must rest. In fact, from today, I am declaring this house a stadium under renovation. No more matches until further notice." Tund gassy, "You can't do this. I have done it already," H said, folding our arms. "If you try to play any more match, I will show you a red card." Blink, his lips trembling. "But no, be in fact, from today you are fasting." Fasting? Staggered. "Yes, fasting, and what I mean is no more conjugal right until I say so." Tund grabbed his head. "Ada, have mercy, at least let's negotiate a friendly match or a small penalty shootout." She shook her head. "My dear husband, not even a handshake." Tund grinned dramatically and collapsed onto the bed. "This is wickedness, this is cruelty in the highest order. This is against human rights. It is smart. No, darling husband, this is called family planning. Since you have decided that I will not go to the hospital, I am now taking the bull by the horn." And with that she turned off the lights and went to sleep, leaving Tund lying there like a defeated warrior, staring at the ceiling. His dreams of another match shattered into tiny pieces. The next morning he woke up and Ada was nowhere to be found. He thought she went out to look for what they would eat as usual, but reality hit him when she didn't return even after the 3rd day. One Saturday morning, he sat up on the bed staring at his 8 children, who were now playing happily with the last spoon they used in finishing the PTS of beans he had planned to share. He couldn't believe it. He didn't realize the importance of his wife. So Ada had truly left me just like that, leaving me with 8 hungry, noisy, and very energetic children. For the first time in his life, he felt something he has never felt before. Fear. I mean real fear, not the type of fear he felt when he owed the woman who so right on credit and had to daughter every morning. No, this fear was different. It was the fear of fatherhood, the fear of raising her children alone when even raising himself had been a struggle. "Papa, we're hungry," the second child, Nozick, said, rubbing his stomach. Tund's eyes widened. "But you people just finished a whole pot of beans now." No nodded. "Seriously?" "Yes, Daddy, but that was breakfast. Now it is lunchtime." "Lunch? What you asks?" He turned to his first son. "On your brother," said what on the 9-years-old, sighed like an old man, and said, "Daddy, we eat 3 times a day." Tund laughed bitterly. "Since when?" Nos counted on his fingers and said, "Since forever. Morning, afternoon, and evening." "You had his head 3 times a day." "A children with no wife." "Oh, this is a clear case of problem has changed hands." He had thought he was the one suffering simply because he leaves the house early and return in the evening. But now suffering had truly introduced itself properly. His thought child there looked up at him. "Daddy, are we going to eat on?" Not. Tund turned to her, looked into her innocent, expect eyes, and then said the only thing his brain could produce at that moment, "Go and drink water." The children ground in frustration. One of them even fell to the ground, dramatically rolling. "Papa, water is no food." Nos complained. "You nodded. "I know, but it can hold the stomach for some time." No, so shook his head. "Daddy, are we not suffering like this?" Tund clapped his hands. "God forbid, nobody is suffering here. You people are fasting." At that frown. "But fasting is for the church." "Yes, and this house is now a church," you declared. "So let's fast." Before the children could protest, a loud knock came at the door. "You heart skeet." He knew that knock anywhere, anytime. It was Baba Kunnel, the landlord. The man was so Juya, but he doesn't play with his house strength. His voice met from outside. "I know you are inside there. Open this door right Now you quickly arranged his face and opened the door smiling. Yes sir, he said with all humility. Your house rent please, the landlord demanded. Tan scratched his head. Her strength, but I've paid now. Paid what? The landlord asked stepping forward. That will strike that lie in your mouth. The last time you paid rent was when Bear was still in power. You think I have forgotten, or you think I will allow you and your football team enjoy my house freely?